switch gears and talk a little bit of Wizards now that we got the whole roundtable. I think that we've exhausted some of our football talk, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting time to be a football fan. And I'll give any other scoring updates on this Monday Night Football game as we go along here. We're going to switch over to the Wizards roundtable. Brian hasn't been part of the Wizards roundtable this season, and this is Kasey's first time on it as well. But we are going to go through the 3 games of the week. We're going to preview the games that are upcoming. It's going to be a little bit different this week because I'm going to try something new, something I've never tried on this podcast before. I shot some footage at the game that I was at, but I didn't have time to edit things together. And so I'm going to showcase, I'm going to try to see if Google Drive can I'm going to flip through it. I'm not going to play the whole videos, but I can show scenes and I can use that to talk about live on air, going to an amazing game. And I have to thank Brian. It was actually Brian's idea to go to this game.
And I didn't even end up going.
I know he didn't even end up going, but I had a wonderful time. I'm sorry that you didn't get to go, but I appreciate the putting the spark of the idea in my head. And then Kasey on his stream, I was like, "What do I do? Do you think?" Because Arun and I were torn. Are we going to go or are we not? We were like, we didn't make our final decision until like 3:00 that afternoon. But Kasey was like, "Look, you can play the new Pokemon game anytime. This is like the one and only time you can see the big 3. You should, if you have a way to do it." And you said if you lived in DC, you would do it. And I said, you know what? Why not? You can only live once. And Arun and I got last minute tickets and we had a blast. So I want to thank both of you guys because without your inspirations, I wouldn't have gotten to go to this game. But let's get into the first game first. I'm going to have to do some Zoom magic. Just give me 1 second. I've got to make my other computer be able to share the screen. So we are going to make it a co-host. All right, so here we go. And now,
No, Robbie, I'm very glad that you went to this game. Like we said on stream, you have to take these chances. Like I'm still looking forward to the day that I get to be at Capital One Arena for the first time. So I'm really glad that you took that opportunity and went.
Yeah, it's true. I haven't gone to a game since my dad was taking me to games, trying to decide whether I want to do the tall version or the wide one. I think tall looks good. Yeah, I'm happy I did. I haven't gone with a friend to a game in a very, very long time. So it was a really cool opportunity. And it was great. The Metro has been upgraded. I have to give shout out to Metro. Now you have cell signal all the way down, which is great because for a long time you only got it above ground and at stations. And it's a $2 set fare, and they have trains running more often on the way home, and it's free parking if it's after 10 that you leave. So like Metro has really upped their game, and so I just want to give them a quick shout out because it used to be like you had to wait 20 minutes for a train at that hour, and that kind of sucked. And so I'm happy that things have gotten a lot better there. Let's get into some of the Wizards action. We'll talk first about the Thunder game, which unfortunately is the loss in this series. Let me do some reconfiguring of this screen for a second. All right, there we go. So the Wizards started off really well, hot. They scored 37 points in the first quarter, outscored them 37-29. In the second, they outscored them 30-25, but OKC came back in the third, outscored them 35-20. And then the Wizards did outscore them by 1 point in the fourth, but at that point it was too little too late. But it was a crazy back and forth fourth quarter. The Wizards looked like they were going to win it, but OKC hit a buzzer beater. Frustrating night for the Wizards, indeed. I'm going to start off with Champ. What were some of your thoughts on this game?
This was tough. This was a tough one. I mean, Shai went off with 42 points in this one, so he was seemingly unstoppable in the middle. This was tough. I mean, you had them on the ropes at halftime. And then it seems like that third quarter, this is the trend that they had last season that I always spoke about on this podcast. It's that third quarter that seems to be the Achilles heel for this team. And once again, they were outscored by 15 points in the third quarter, and that was the big difference in this ball game. Offensively, the Wizards did pretty well. I mean, they had Kuzma with 18, they had Avdia with 12, Porzingis had 27, Beal had 25. Being back from being off COVID protocols, he's still coming back in the form. Monte Morris had 11, Hachimura off the bench at 14. So you had some offensive output from your team, but the end result was that, again, very tough you got to keep fighting even when you're ahead. Otherwise, a team like OKC will come back and you end up suffering a 1-point loss, which ends what was a very, very impressive 4-game winning streak for this team. So very tough loss, and you'll find out in a bit how they were able to bounce back from that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm gonna go Kasey to you next. What are some of your thoughts on this one?
Well, this one's a dagger to my heart personally. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, being from Kentucky, a lifelong Kentucky fan, Shai is one that every time I have a dream scenario of us getting a traded point guard to us, of getting another big star, Shai is the player that I want so badly. So him putting the dagger in my heart for this game was absolutely heartbreaking. I'm with Champ though. We've got to be able to execute in that third quarter. You have to play the third quarter. This is a game of runs, and the person that has the last run is usually the team that has the last run is usually the team that wins. And if you can mitigate that early by having big runs throughout your first 3 quarters, sometimes those runs in the fourth quarter won't come back to bite you as bad. So we have to play especially good in the first 36 minutes of the game.
For sure. And Brian, I know that you have played this team recently, the Knicks, that is. Brian's a Knicks fan, but he gives us sort of a perspective from outside the Wizards. But Brian, what are your thoughts on OKC and this game?
Yeah, actually, the Knicks played OKC tonight and won 129-119. But actually, they played OKC another time before this game against the Wizards at home at Madison Square Garden. And that was a crazy game. The Knicks actually scored 48 first quarter points, which is a team record, and still lost. They lost 145-135 in a crazy game. And this game, the Wizards Thunder game, was kind of similar, very high scoring. And I echo everything you guys have said about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I agree with Kasey. As a Knicks fan, I've kind of dreamed myself of having Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on my team at some point. For sure. I know the Knicks were hesitant to give up draft picks and capital for Donovan Mitchell this summer, which might have turned out to be a good move. It might not have been, but I would be willing to give up that draft picks and that capital for a player like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, he's averaging 30 points a game this season. I think he was on a stretch at this time where he I think scored 40 or more in like 3 or 4 straight games. The guy is a beast. OKC was supposed to be really rebuilding this year. Everybody was talking about how they'd be like losing every game and be in contention for the number 1 pick, which is pretty clearly Victor Wembanyama. I always mess up the last name, but he's the projected number 1 pick, and everybody thought OKC was going to go for him. But they've not been so bad. I know it's still really early, but they've actually, in both games against the Knicks, I didn't think they were that bad. And the game they won, they were really good. So I think there's talent on this team for sure. And yeah, definitely a tough loss from everything you guys have said. The third quarter was definitely a difficult one for the Wizards. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right now, in my opinion, probably one of the best players in this league.
That idea of Victor Wembanyama next to Chet Holmgren is the most disgusting.
Ooh, I know, right?
I've heard of in my life. Oh my God.
And I hope Chet comes back okay. I was really bummed with what happened to him this summer. I really hope that the NBA does something about those Pro-Am games. I don't know if it's the best idea to have right before a season, especially, your rookie season like that. But I do hope he comes back okay. There's definitely a lot of young, good potential on this Thunder team, even with him out this year.
Yeah,
for sure. All right, so we're going to go back here. We're going to pull up the box score for this game, but I'm going to break down. I want to break down the journey first or the box score. I'll break down the box score first, and then I'll talk about my journey to and during and after the game, and then I will get your guys' thoughts on it as well. So the box score goes, it was a pretty good first half, very high scoring, very competitive game. Miami came into this game with a ton of injuries. A lot of their key players were out, which I was okay with. And but they were still able to put up a lot of points. We only outscored them 33-31. In the second quarter, I went to go get some hot dogs, and Arun didn't hold the fort down very well, and they outscored us 38-24. And it was a pretty rough quarter. When I came back, Arun looked very sad, and I was like, oh man, it just really kind of fell apart for us. And so I did a post about how excited I was to get a hat and how happy I am to be there for the big three at halftime, but it wasn't looking good at that point, because to be outscored by 14 points there in that quarter was rough. And in the third quarter, though, the Wizards really put together a great run, outscored them 24-19, set themselves up for success in the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, they were able to outscore them 23-16. Some really good defense, especially on the last play. And then an overtime, the lowest scoring overtime, I believe, in the history of the NBA. The Wizards outscored Miami 3-2. One basket was a dunk by Porzingis, and one free throw made out of two by the Wizards by Kuzma, and 2 free throws made by the Heat. And that was all the scoring. No scoring for the last 2.5 minutes of the game. But I was really there to see the big three. That was the impetus for me going. I'm going to see real quickly if any of this works. All right. So shout out to FTX, who sponsored this amazing hat. And
I don't know if you want to be shouting them out, Robbie.
Well, no, it's funny because it's like one of the last pieces of merchandise that they're ever going to front, right? So I feel like this thing is going to be like a collector's item. People can see that I'm going to keep it right above up there. So
the relic of 2022 for sure.
Exactly. And they had some cool things. It was an Anton Jameson hat, so it was to celebrate 20,000 point club, and it had his name stitched inside of it. You can see this is our view from the top, the big three down there. That's the stitching I was talking about there. So this was me before the game. I did a Facebook Live. You can also like seeing things. They've renovated the top of the building, so there's like actual different lighting and different screens all the way through, all the way to the top. It kind of reminds me a little bit of what they do at Madison Square Garden. There's like screens at the very top now. So that's really cool. They added it. I was amazed. So the name of the anthem singer for that night's game was the most perfect name I've ever heard of any anthem singer in my life. So obviously we're in Washington, D.C. This guy's name is D.C. Washington. Which I was like, wow. More like it was like his life goal to like be an announcer or something. So I was like, that was pretty cool. I was like, I thought that was I was like, wait, his name is, because I thought I was reading the Chiron wrong. But anyway, so they had a really great video here. Let me see if this actually plays a little bit. Let me see if this actually can play. So I just want to show a little bit of the lighting. I don't think you guys can hear it, right? But so the lighting of it was really cool, and so I like the new screens, and so I really like the game presentation. And they were celebrating 25 years, which was really kind of cool. And so yeah, I was really excited to be there. I was really amped up about it. And then I'm just going to show. So we've already showed some of this stuff, and yeah, so the big three were there, and then I wanted to show these plays at the end of the game that I had highlighted. All right, so hold on, sorry, I don't have it. Is it this one? No, that was not. Sorry, it'll take me a second to get to it. I took a lot of pictures. All right. Oh, here it is right there. So let's see if this works. This is the very end of the game. Oh, hold on. It doesn't work when I do that full screen. All right. So I'm going to stop doing that. So it was a great defensive stop here. If they had made that bucket right there, it would have been over. And I thought they had a real shot at it. And so it went all the way to overtime. And this was the big play. It was, I thought, a really good look. Oh, can I zoom in that way? Yes. I was trying to figure out how to zoom in. So you can see right here, it's a pass. There's an open look. But it was just, the buzzer beater that fell in the last game didn't fall in this one. So I was just really happy about that. So it was just kind of cool. I thought I would show, I was obviously very happy after this win. So, and so, yeah, and then, me and Arun.
Look at that guy.
Right, there you go. And, so. Regulation and overtime to win it, I thought was really crucial. All right, I'm going to start off with you, Champ. What were some of your thoughts on this game?
This was a game here where you have the big three in the house. This is a big night. You have the crowd amped. You have the crowd hyped, ready to go, and it's one of those games where you face adversity and you bounce back. You fight back and you fight with everything you have. You see the stats from Kyle Lowry. He had a triple-double on the night. Kyle Lowry had a fantastic game for the Heat. But on the opposite side of this, the Wizards had a very good game as well. You got big production from Kuzma, Porzingis, and Beal. It feels like to me like this is your new big three right here. It's Kuzma, Porzingis, and Beal. They all scored well, all scored 20 points or more. They played well defensively. They had their lapses, but they also had their great defense as well. Of course, Robbie highlighted it with the great defensive stop to force overtime and being able to hold on and not give up a field goal in overtime and only give up 2 free throws to win the game by 1. Shows how good this defense can be when they're really on point. So this was a big win for the Wiz coming off that tough loss to OKC two nights earlier. Big win, and it starts off a very good trend for this Wizards team.
Yeah, for sure. Kasey, what are some of your thoughts on this one?
Okay, of all the games that we played, which I did watch some of this because I knew you were there, Robbie. After off stream, I was watching some of this. I really, really love the combination that we have with Bill and Porzingis. A lot of people, like Champ saying, a lot of people probably look at that three and think that this is the winning recipe, but there's something about the way that their chemistry works together that they perform well, and we have a lot of, as you can tell, a lot of role players that are stepping up and they're coming out and they're playing like Hachimura and Kispert. If you just look at the two here, combined for a total of 30 points. But that's a lot to come from 2 of your young draft picks. And Denny's been playing pretty well. He didn't have such a great game here. Go 3-3 or 3-1-3, but we're getting.
I do want to talk about that real quickly about why Denny had a bad game. The fouls that were being called on him were not the same fouls that are being called on Taj Gibson. And I know that Taj Gibson is a veteran, but even Brad said after the game that like he needs to start talking to the refs a little more about it because Denny was getting some bogus calls early in the game that took him out of his rhythm and out of the game. And so I thought that was pretty frustrating, especially I was watching it and because there's a lot of Heat fans at this game. It was about 50-50 in the crowd. Everyone on their team was like, yeah, I don't see how that's a foul. They're fans either. So it's just kind of baffling, some calls.
Right. And I mean, Denny had a rough night in that area anyway. So it's really hard to be down on him for this game. Denny still got some of the youth that kind of shows that when something kind of throws him out of his rhythm, he's going to be out of rhythm. If you can kind of get in Denny's head, there's some games that affects him greatly. But it's just, I'll point out in the last couple games, and I'm sure a lot of y'all have seen the stat running around that when Kyle Kuzma is scoring like 20 plus points a game, we're like 7 or 8. No. I really do feel like our energy is ran through Kyle Kuzma. depending on how well Kuz is playing, almost prove how well the rest of the Wizards is playing. And
I mean, you're not wrong. Every game he scored over 20 points, I believe we won this season.
yeah, every single one, we're like 7 or 8. No, it's every game that he has showed up big, we've managed to win. And I think that has to say something about the kind of energy spark plug that Kuzma. Kuzma's the kind of guy that you can tell from watching him on the bench that he's engaging with his teammates. He's been in a winning culture. He, as much as I hate to give credit, but I have to give credit where credit is due. He's played under LeBron, who was one of the people who knows how to win. He's learned some of those tricks from LeBron. And you bring that here, and he kind of gets to show that he was better than what he was in LA. And of all the players that play with a chip on their shoulder in the league, Kyle Kuzma is my favorite to watch because he is going out to work as hard as he can to prove that he is a name in this league. And I think
he's got tough shoes to fill. I mean, we traded Westbrook, we traded him for 3 players, but ultimately the long term, this was the long play of what we got out of it, right? So and I think we won that trade from what I've seen at least.
Right. I'm not gonna share too much about that. I was not a big fan of us trading away Wall in the first place for Westbrook, but looking back on it now, I'm happy. But again, give me a break, Kentucky boy, John Wall. Love it. Okay.
And I love John Wall too. I think a lot of Wizards fans do, but the problem was the injury bug had taken him away, and it's not worth the 50 million. It's just, it's not that we don't like John Wall. We would take John Wall for half that, but he had a rough contract, and it was hard to, with the amount of injuries he was having.
I understand why he's gone, but I'm just saying,
I think that's fair, and I liked him too. So Brian, real quickly, get your thoughts on this one before we get into the last game.
Oh, I actually agree with both of you guys. I really think that the Wizards, when they're at their best, it does flow through Kuzma. He even said as such, like, you should work through me, and we'll have, like, last week. I can't remember who the game was against, but he was talking about how, like, the offense should flow through me, and he had that game where he went off. They're clearly at their best when things are going through Kuzma, and, this game is another example of that. I think you can put some stock into the fact that some of the Heat's main players were out. Jimmy Butler was out. Bam Adebayo was out in this game. Definitely, if they're in there, the Heat probably do win this game, but you got to give credit to the Wizards. Is that really the lowest scoring overtime of all time in the history of the NBA? That's
what Arun said, and I kind of would believe it. Like,
I believe Arun too, honestly, because that's pretty crazy. 5 points in overtime. But it was enough. And, with the big 3 in the house, that's kind of the gritty win you'd want to have. So I got to give them credit for this win, They
also didn't have Tyler Hero, and one of the 8, they have to, by rule of the NBA, you have to dress 8 players. One of the players they dressed was injured, was never going to play, but they put him in just so that way they could say they dressed 8. But so they always knew they were only going to dress 7. And I have to give the Heat a lot of credit for being able to have a competitive game through overtime with 7 players, regardless. Like,
they're a good team. When at full strength, they're one of the best in the Eastern Conference. So, this is they're going to play the Heat a couple more times this week. So we'll see how that goes. But
Max Strus, I thought, was amazing. Now, none of his
player.
buckets fell in the second half for him, because if any of them did, we would have lost. But in the first half, he just dominated. Like, I was like, oh my God, every time I would look up and it's like him again, so, because obviously Lowry was, is the reason that they're going to win. He's the engine. He had a triple double, right? And played 51 minutes, which is kind of insane. Only took him out for 2 minutes of the whole game. But, but Max was the guy that they had to have. They had to have another guy step up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had an atrocious second half, but his first half was incredible. I think he went away from what was working. He was driving more in the first half, and he was like settling for jumpers more in the second half. He's probably just getting tired, to be honest. But if you're tired, the jump shots don't fall always, as you could see. And I just, But anyway, interesting game. And the reason we spend so much time talking about them, we're going to see them a lot this upcoming week. So that's kind of foreshadowing our preview. But we do have one more game to talk about. And this game happened yesterday against the Charlotte Hornets, who are having injury troubles of their own. The Wizards started this game well, up 35-27. Again, another instance where starting the game well panned out and really helped them, especially in a game where it got closer down the stretch. So in games where we started off poorly, we haven't been able to gain enough momentum throughout the game to pull out a win. So I think a key, I don't think every game that we've been up in the first quarter we've won, but almost all of our wins we've done very well in the first quarter. I'll put it that way. So you have to come out strong. And then the Hornets had a really good second quarter, outscoring 28-24. A really good third quarter, outscoring 24-18. Things were kind of falling apart on the Wizards. The Wizards were able to put together a really good fourth quarter, though, put up 29 points to the 23 for the Hornets, and were able to eke out a victory. Gordon Hayward had a hell of a game with 20 points. He got injured in the second half. And I think that may have been a big reason why we were able to win, because he had a hurt shoulder. And he just wasn't the same player after that. Kelly Oubre Jr., old ex-Wizard, 23 points for him. I thought he played very well as well for the Wizards. Kuzma had a tremendous game, 28 points, 10 rebounds. Bradley Beal at 26 and 4. Porzingis didn't have quite the night that he had in some of these recent ones, but again, it's more about Kuzma going off with Bradley Beal than it is about Porzingis, I think, as we've talked about before. But I'll start off with Champ. What are some of your thoughts on this game?
Not to be ignored as well is with what Kuz and what Beal did in this game, but Denny Abdia with a double-double, 12 and 13. That was really huge as well in this game.
This is a bounce back game, because we were talking about him having a really rough game the night before.
Absolutely.
Before.
Absolutely. Yeah. He had a really rough game against Miami, but then bounced back and was able to get that double-double, played well inside the paint, getting those boards. 13 boards is nothing to scoff at all. That's a really great showing. But the one thing about this team is that even though they faced adversity, giving up that first quarter lead and getting outscored in both the second and third quarters, they were able to bounce back in the fourth quarter where it counted, and were able to push ahead and be able to beat a team that is not as good as they look without some of their key players like Ball. Yes, Kelly Oubre Jr., former Wizard, went off. He had a great game, but this Wizards team was able to stand the test and was able to finish off this homestand with the victory. And they finished this homestand 5-1, 6-game homestand, and only lost one game, and that was a close one to OKC, which should give the rest of the Eastern Conference a notice that, hey, this isn't the same Wizards team from last season that started off hot and then fizzled right before the All-Star break and never recovered. This is a Wizards team that is going to compete in this Eastern Conference and be a threat in this Eastern Conference, but they need to keep it going. They can't have this little stretch here of 5 out of 6 wins and then all of a sudden fizzle out. They have to keep this momentum going.
I agree. Kasey, what are some of your thoughts on this?
I want to go back and just echo what Champ said about Denny. I'm arguably one of Denny's biggest advocates, but that stat line stood out to me. It requires, as I was saying earlier, it requires those role players to come in and put up and do their job. It doesn't matter how often your top players go off. Sometimes they can carry your team to a win, but you have to have contributions from everybody else that's on that roster. Basketball, much like hockey, is a game where everybody has to contribute, and if you're out there in 4-on-5, you're likely going to lose if you have one player not contributing. So I just want to echo the sentiment on Denny. Very happy to see him help that game. This was just one of those games where I felt like our defensive effort was very good. As you can see, we had 8 more blocks. We had 1 more steal. Our turnovers could have been better, and Brad acknowledged that. But we went out. We got defensive boards. We got offensive boards. Like, we played well defensively, in my opinion, and it was enough to try to help us in those final moments.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll get Brian's thoughts. What are your thoughts on this one?
Oh yeah, I mean the Hornets are off to a really bad start this season, like you guys have been saying. A lot of injuries. LaMelo Ball's their best player. He's been out for a good portion of the season. They have also the situation with Miles Bridges and his domestic violence issue hanging over the team right now. So it's not a good situation for the Hornets right now. They're off to a pretty crappy start this year. But I agree with you guys. Great defensive effort from the Wizards in this game. Again, another great offensive game from Kuzma, 28 points. And I agree with, not to belabor the point here, but I agree with you guys. Great bounce back from Denny. Not great on that Friday night, but to respond well with a double-double, good for him. Obviously, you guys know how I feel about Porzingis, so I'm not going to get too into that. But I do like that the offense kind of flows well between Kuzma and Beal. I think that's the main deal. I think Porzingis, can contribute for sure, but to me, those are the two guys you rely on the most for points. And, they stepped up big time. I think Beal actually got hurt in this game. So I don't know how he's doing injury-wise, but that's the duo I think the Wizards rely on for most of their offense. And, yeah, a good win against a pretty bad Charlotte team.
Yeah, the game actually came down to the wire, and Bradley Beal was hurt. He tried to gut it out, but at the end, they wanted to have some better defensive players because it became a free throw game. And I was happy that they were able to knock down some clutch free throws in that scenario. I think Denny actually hit one of those last free throws himself. But yeah, Brad was out at the very end, but I have not seen an injury update on that.
Still got a couple days till the next game, so
yeah,
still time. Yeah,
definitely. All right, let's take a look at the upcoming schedule real fast. We've got 2 games at Miami, which is weird. Rarely do you play a doubleheader against the same team, both on the road. Wednesday at 7:30 and Friday at 8 o'clock. Obviously, they're going to want revenge from the game that we just were witness. And I don't know. I haven't heard about their injury reports, but I'll be interested to see if they get some of their players back for those. And then they also play at Boston to finish up this 3-game road trip. That's a 6 o'clock game on Sunday. They play a lot of these 6 o'clock games on Sunday, it seems, this year. And then on Monday, the Timberwolves are coming to town, and on that we'll be able to do a post-game show next week on the podcast for that one. So that'll be interesting because that game will be going on during our show, and it'll be just finishing. So we'll be doing live scoring updates through the earlier segments of the show for that as well. So I'll go down the line. I'll let each one of you guys pick a team. There's 2 against the Heat, so I'm going to combine that as the one team. So Heat, Celtics, and Timberwolves. Kasey, which opponent do you want to talk about?
Let me take the Celtics if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, all right. Why don't you start off with the Celtics? It's a Sunday 6 o'clock game, and what are your thoughts on that matchup?
That's always an interesting matchup in my opinion because we tend to play the Celtics very well. Bradley tends to show up and come out in those games. I don't know if it's just that relationship that he has with Jason Tatum that makes it more competitive in his mind. We've typically been able to do well with them. I remember last year we had a overtime win against them that I remember watching. And so I think even though right now the Celtics are a very, very hot hand, I do feel like we can hang with them. I think we can hang with any team in the league right now. I'm trying to actually find the Celtics.
I have it actually here. So
they're 13-4.
Yeah, so they won 9 in a row before
They're
losing.
on fire.
Actually,
Yeah.
tonight they lost at Chicago 121-107. So that win streak has ended. They'll be playing Dallas on Wednesday at 7:30. Then on Friday they play Sacramento. Both those games in Boston, and they'll continue this really long homestand they have against us on Sunday. So Boston's been on fire in all their sports. I wanted to mention earlier in the NFL, they won on a last kind of second play on a run back for a touchdown against the Jets in football. And then in hockey, They started off the Bruins is one of the hottest teams in hockey, and then here they were able to win 9 games in a row. Boston's been doing well on the sports side of things, so they're going to be a tough matchup for sure. But Kasey, any final thoughts you have on that?
Just looking forward to it. I think it's going to come down to the kind of game that we get from our big three in that game specifically. I think it's going to take a big game from all three of them, healthy, and if they all three come out and they produce, I think we can hang with them, and I think we can give the Celtics another loss.
Yep. All right, Champ, do you want to take the double dip versus the Heat, or do you want to talk about the Timberwolves game?
I want the double dip.
All right, go for the double dip.
Right. So again, Heat coming off, they came here to our house on the night that the big three reunited and lost in overtime. Very, very close game. They're going to be looking for revenge. They're going to be looking to try to have us come to their house and embarrass us in their house. But what's going to be the determining factor is if they get some of their key pieces back from injury. It was mentioned earlier on, Brian made the great point that they had a lot of people injured. You made the point, Robbie, that they dressed somebody who was injured and couldn't play just so they could have 8 to play. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see coming into this, because again, this game is on Wednesday. Will they be able to have more of their pieces to play? And it's going to be interesting because it's again a very weird scheduling thing where they're playing the same team back to back, and it's not a home and home. They have to play them twice in Miami. I don't know how the Wizards are going to be able to work around that. Are they going to stay in Miami on Thursday and then play Friday and then fly out Saturday? That's what's happening, right? Yep. Okay, so if they're able, that's what they're doing. I think
they have Thanksgiving in Miami. That's not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, no comment. No comment. Anyway, but I feel like the Wizards are going to feed off of the fact that, again, they did end their 4-game losing streak in OKC, but then they started off a 2-game winning streak to end their homestand, and now they have this short 3-game road trip with only 2 cities. I think they're going to be able to push through it. They're going to be able to beat the Heat both on Wednesday and Friday and be able to move forward to the Celtics game. So I got them going 2 for 2 in Miami this week.
So it's interesting. They're played an 8-man team against. They actually also are playing against the Timberwolves. That was their last loss. They lost 105-101, which is the closest game. They had lost 2 other games recently. They lost at Cleveland. Yes, they lost at Cleveland after losing to us. So they've now lost 4 in a row. Yep. But yeah, so they have slightly more reserves, but not much, So and it's crazy. All 3 of them had to put in double digits just for them to even score the 101 in that, because they just have so few players. So it's a lot of wear and tear on their bodies, though. Even if they have 8 players every night, like you need the reserves to some extent, Mm-hmm. And so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. I kind of imagine them taking one of them, though, just because they're going to hate us so much. I would be happy with a split in Miami. But hopefully they'll take advantage of some of that. And Brian, I'll give you the last one. So next Monday we're playing the Timberwolves, which have been a bit on a hot streak lately. After losing 3 in a row, they've now won 4 in a row, including 3 on the road at Cleveland, at Orlando, at Philadelphia, before beating the aforementioned Miami. They'll play at Indiana this week, at Charlotte this week, and then versus Golden State Warriors on Sunday, a 3:30 game, before playing us on Monday. So they'll play the Sunday-Monday doubleheader, just like we're doing. What are your thoughts on the Timberwolves, Brian?
Yeah, you mentioned the 3 straight losses they had before the winning streak they had. One of those losses was to the Knicks, so I have seen the Timberwolves a little bit lately. They're a bit of they made the big trade this offseason to get Rudy Gobert. They gave up a lot, like a ton, to get Rudy Gobert. Not just players, but they also gave up a ton of draft picks as well. So they went all in on Rudy Gobert and making a big 3 with him, Anthony Edwards, and Karl Anthony Towns. Anthony Edwards just gets better and better each season. He's one of the best young players in this league, without a doubt. But Gobert so far, I think, has struggled a little bit. They are playing better lately. And you mentioned the schedule they have this week against the Hornets, the Pacers, and then Golden State. I think that's a chance for them to get at least 2 more wins in a row before maybe that Golden State game where their winning streak comes to an end. I think that, we'll see how it goes for the rest of them. They've been pretty inconsistent to start. That'll be a good test for the Wizards at home. I think it's a winnable game for Washington. They keep doing what they've been doing lately. I think they'll have a chance against the Timberwolves. I would like to, though, just talk about the Celtics game a little bit, too.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think I've been actually pretty impressed by the Celtics so far this year, to be honest. Considering what happened right before the season started with everything with Ime Udoka and that whole situation, we still don't really know all the details about it, but, that could have carried over the team pretty in a big way. And they've come out, they responded. You mentioned the 9 wins in a row. Jason Tatum is playing some of the best ball he's played all season, not only to have the Udoka situation over their head, but, they went to the finals last year. They lost to Golden State. That was a long, long season for them. And to come back out and be as hot as they've been, I've been admittedly pretty impressed with the Celtics so far this year. So even with their their winning streak ending tonight, I've been pretty impressed. So that's a game I'm going to keep an eye on for sure as well. But as far as the Timberwolves, that's going to be a challenge, and I think it's going to be a good game, but I can see the Wizards definitely winning.
Yeah. So I just want to give a quick little scoring update in this game, the Monday Night Football game. The San Francisco 49ers are up 38-10. They just got a first down, so they're able to now kneel the clock out. So victory formation for them. So a big win for them, 38-10. They'll go to 6-4 for their record. So I just wanted to give a little Monday Night Football update. And Jimmy Garoppolo tied a career high 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So he had himself a heck of a night as well. And it's it'll be interesting to see how this week goes for the Wizards. Brian, I know that you said that you have Tuesday and Wednesday off this week, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is that going to be going forward for the next couple of weeks?
Everything's up in the air right now, Robbie. I have
idea.
no idea what my schedule is looking like for the next couple of weeks. It all depends.
I just didn't know if we were going to have you back next week to talk.
I will let you know. I will let you know.
Okay, that sounds good. Because it would be fun to kind of preview the Giants game potentially as well. So
I will let you know.
Yeah, that would be awesome. But it's been fun to have this team do the Wizards Roundtable. I'm gonna let Champ and Kasey, do you want to stay on for soccer talk, or would you like? I can let you guys go. It's up to you. I'll start off with you, Kasey.
I know this much about soccer.
Okay,
and fair. I know even less.
Yeah, so we'll do the soccer segment with me and Brian at the end. So I'm gonna let Kasey go first. I'm gonna thank him so much for being on both the Caps Talk and the Wizards Roundtable. But Kasey, I'll give your
I already did it.
Oh, you already did it? Champ's already on the ball. And that's why it's good to have good mods. I enjoy modding over on Kasey's stream as well, and I get to mod for Champ. So it's fun over there. You can go check some Pokemon content out. But Kasey, let people know where they can catch you and any other information you want them to know before we let you go.
You can find me at TitanizingKM on Twitter. And same as here on Twitch. I stream this week. I'm streaming every day except for Thursday. I'll be online at 1:00 playing the new Pokemon game. Come out and good time. If you don't know anything about Pokemon, it's still a fun time. I'll chat pro wrestling, I'll chat sports, I'll chat. I will chat about anything. I love to talk about just random stuff. So come out and give me a random fact, and we'll go for fun. So, and it's corgis on stream. I do have 2 corgis that make appearances about every stream. So.
Nice. I definitely hope that people go check it out. Even if you know nothing about Pokemon, it's still just kind of fun to watch Kasey grind it out, and I have a good time over there. I live vicariously since I wish I could be playing Pokemon and not doing work. So it's kind of a fun time over there. Again, 1:00 Eastern, all the days except for Thanksgiving, where I think it's up in the air. Is that right? Or
yeah. So I will be Thursday. There will be a stream. I still haven't figured out. I'm waiting to find out what time we have to be at the family dinner. After that, and also Saturday and Sunday, I'll be on by 4:00 at latest. I'm hoping to have an earlier start time, but we'll be on by 4.
Well, that sounds good. But Kasey, I enjoyed having you on the podcast. We'll definitely have to do this again sometime soon. And yeah, everyone go check out Titan Rising KM over on Twitch or on Twitter. And I hope that you have a great night and a happy Thanksgiving. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me on. It's been great.
All right, Champ. I know that Kasey got to join us as you talked about the No Spots podcast, or a live watch along on the No Spots podcast channel. I'm going to give the Champ command for you. Champ, let people know what's happening on your podcast this upcoming week.
Yes, so this week the World Tag League and Super Junior Tag League kicked off this morning actually. Super Junior Tag League kicked off. Tomorrow morning will be the kickoff of World Tag League, and on Wednesday we will recap the first 3 nights of the tournament tour with myself and Sage on Twitch at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We will not be doing it on Thursday because obviously it's Thanksgiving, and then Friday the weekly podcast where we will be previewing the upcoming Survivor Series War Games pay-per-view live event for WWE, which we will be live reacting to on Saturday. So yes, we have 3 streams coming up on Twitch this week, as well as 2 podcasts coming up this week, with the New Japan podcast going up on Thursday and the weekly wrestling podcast going up on Saturday. You can check them out on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from, or you can check out SportsOTHP.com and click that partners button. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Champ. I appreciate you moderating and being a part of this. And it was fun talking football and basketball with you tonight, as always. And we'll talk next week, as we'll have hopefully another exciting week of Washington, D.C. sports. But Champ, as always, appreciate you for riding shotgun with me. And we'll talk more soon.
Absolutely. Hail to the Commanders and go Wiz and CAPS, caps.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Well, have a great Thanksgiving. We'll talk.